Welcome to the tutorial for prepping data for the ArcGIS Collector app. My name is Malcolm Williamson. I'm a researcher at the Center for Advanced Spatial Technologies, CAST, at the University of Arkansas. I've been working with GIS for a long time, almost 25 years now, and I hope I can make this easy for you to understand. Before you start, make sure that you're going to be working on a Windows computer running either Windows 7 or Windows 10. You'll need to make sure that you have ArcGIS Desktop installed. Check the version, make sure it's at least 10.2. The current version is 10.3.1. And check with your facilitator to make sure that you have an account in your program's ArcGIS Online organization. This is the web-based ArcGIS, and make sure that the role for your login is set to publisher. This is something that your facilitator has to set up. So what are you going to collect? First of all, everything that you put on a map is what we call a feature. So it can be roads, buildings, lakes, contours, parks, streams, anything that you put on a map, that's a feature. And features can be represented by several different types of geometry when we start working in GIS. So first of all, we have points. Points are good for things like trees, fire hydrants, which we'll be doing. Depending upon how much detail you need, they might even be useful for things like buildings, if you just need a point that you can locate for an address. Other things are represented as lines, roads, sidewalks, streams. Those are the kind of common things that we use lines for, pipelines, things like that. And finally, we have polygons. Polygons are lines that close to make a closed boundary where we care about what's inside versus what's outside. So things like city limits, lakes, buildings themselves, if you want to show the individual buildings, state boundaries, things like that. We use polygons a lot also. So features that represent similar things are grouped into what we call a feature class. So for example, they all have to have the same geometry type. They all have to be points, lines, or polygons. They have to have the same attributes. And they have to have the same coordinate system, which we'll also talk about a little bit later too. So if we have some interstate highways and we have some neighborhood roads, well, they both are roads that you drive cars on, and we're probably going to represent them as lines, and they're probably going to have the same types of attributes, even though they're different kinds of roads. So we can put them together in the same feature class. Whereas if we have sidewalks and we have roads, well, one of those is used for cars and one of those is used for pedestrians, maybe bicycles. They're really not the same thing. We probably don't want those together in the same feature class, even though they are both lines. So in this example map I've got up, you see several different feature classes. We have fire hydrants on here as red points. We have streets as black lines. And we have property parcels, the piece of land that you own, represented as these kind of tan polygons. So what we're going to work on in this tutorial is a fire hydrant mapping project, where we're going to map the location of each hydrant, mapping them as points. And we're going to have descriptions of these hydrants as well. So how are we going to describe what we collect? Attributes are things that describe our individual features. So in this case, we want to have a fire hydrant ID number that would be assigned by the fire department. We might not know what it is right now. We might have to add that later. We're going to have the name of the manufacturer, which is stamped on each hydrant. We can actually look on the fire hydrant and read those as we're collecting it out in the field. And we need to know how many hose connectors there are. Now there's two different sizes of connectors on these fire hydrants. The smaller one, about 2.5 inches, those are the ones that they put fire hoses directly on. We also want to know how many pump connectors there are. These are the bigger connections, about 4.5 inches. Now, I've learned a little bit about fire hydrants getting ready for this tutorial, and it turns out that the standard configuration for a fire hydrant has 2 of the smaller hose connections and 1 of the bigger pump connections, but they're not the only way that these can be made. And the fire departments definitely want to know what the rated flow is of each fire hydrant, and this is measured in gallons per minute at 20 pounds per square inch. They will actually go to the fire hydrants and do tests on the hydrants and record what that flow is. This is very important to them. Next, we have the color of the top of the fire hydrant and the caps. This is a standard that's determined by the National Fire Protection Association that they use to allow firefighters to see what the flow rating is on each hydrant just by looking at the color. So there are some standards for that. We'll talk about that a little later. And then what's the color of the main part of the barrel? The Fire Protection Association recommends that that be yellow, but there are probably some exceptions out there as well. So attributes are stored in a table for each one of our feature classes. So for our hydrant class, we'll have a table with these attributes where each row in the table is assigned to an individual feature on the map. In each field, what you think of as the column in the table, is going to be reserved for a specific type of attribute, information about that feature, and this will have a name, a heading for the column, for the field, and the data that goes in that field has to be of a specific type that we tell the computer what it will accept. It could be text, it could be a number, it could be dates, or some other things. After you collect your data, the table, as I said, will have 1 row per feature per each fire hydrant, with attributes for each one. So this might be what your table looks like after all your work is done. You can see I've got 3 different rows for 3 different fire hydrants. I've got the ID number, the manufacturer, the number of hose connections, the number of pump connectors, and the flow and the colors. So this is the kind of end product here. Now we're ready to move into ArcMap, the main part of ArcGIS Desktop, where I'll show you how to create a new empty feature class to collect your features in, define the attributes that you're going to collect at the same time, and then how to publish the data to ArcGIS Online so that you can use it with the Collector app.